Trey Miguel, Zachary Wentz, Desmond Xavier, and Myron Reed formed a faction on the independent scene known as the Rascalz. They went on to TNA and became multi-time tag team champions. Excuse me. Before Wentz and Xavier went over to NXT to form the team name MSK under the names Wesley and Nash Carter. Zachary Wentz, due to some unfortunate circumstances, ended up getting released from WWE, and Wesley ended up staying. Wentz went back to TNA to reunite with the rest of the Rascalz, and they had a bit of a fun time in NXT until Wesley turned heel, attacking Trey Miguel. In this scenario, we saw Wentz and Wesley go at it in the worst way possible. But now Desmond Xavier, aka Wesley, had went back to TNA right around the end of 2025 to reunite with the rest of the Rascalz. However, it was noted by several news outlets that Desmond Xavier was never signed with TNA. In fact, excuse me. In fact, rumors had spread that TNA did not sign Desmond Xavier back to their promotion in any capacity. However, there's been a little bit of light. However, a little bit of light has been shed that all four members of the Rascalz are no longer under contract with TNA, as Wentz, Miguel, and Reed have all decided to not renew their deals with TNA. This poses a big question that has been asked numerous times anytime someone gets released, and the question is, could we see all four Rascalz back in NXT? Well, there's definitely a lot to consider with the idea of the Rascalz being a part of NXT once again. For one, we have to ask ourselves if Zachary Wentz had learned his lesson from when he got released from WWE the first time. Did he learn his lesson? And how will the fans react to seeing Desmond Xavier, aka Wesley, back in NXT, having the fact that he's one of the longest reigning NXT North American champions of all time? In fact, I believe Wesley holds the record for the second longest reign at a little over 260 days. I think it is, and Obafemi, now a part of the main roster, has the longest reign of almost 280 days, which is huge, which is absolutely huge. But here's the thing: Ethan Page, he's getting closer and closer and closer to breaking not only Desmond Xavier's reign, but also potentially Obafemi's reign as North American champion. Another question would be how the fans will react to seeing all four Rascalz back together, given what Wesley did to Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz back in the summer in 2025 last year. Not only super kicking Trey Miguel, but also kicking Zachary Wentz low at the Great American Bash. How will the fans react? Are they going to cheer for Desmond Xavier, or are they going to boo Desmond Xavier. The possibilities are definitely out there. However, it has been noted that there are several sources that believe that all four members of the Rascalz are interested in going back to WWE later on this year. But the question is, where are they going to go? Are they going to go to Raw? Are they going to go to SmackDown? Or are they going to go to NXT? At this point, Wesley, with Wesley, aka Desmond Xavier, there were multiple opportunities for WWE to put him on either Raw or SmackDown, but many people believe that he had already reached his peak in NXT, and there was nothing left for him to do. So they just decided to release him of his contract. Sorry guys, I have to get lotion on my hands because my hands are dry. Anyway, some people believe that he isn't ready for, to go back to NXT simply because of the fact of how fans will react to seeing him back in NXT. Again, it's like, are they going to cheer him or are they going to boo him? No one knows. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, let's say that WWE does sign them all to NXT. What comes next? What are their goals? What are their motives to being back in NXT? Do we see Wentz and Xavier go after the NXT tag team titles, currently being held by Darkstate, or do we see Reed go after the North American title currently being held by Ethan Page? Do we see Miguel go after the NXT title, which is now vacant? What happens? Where do the Rascalz go from here? At this point, it really doesn't make much of a difference how, not how, but what their motives would be in NXT. I think the only thing that would matter is how the fans would react. And honestly, I think the fans would be thrilled to see all four Rascalz united once again, because the idea of seeing the Rascalz in NXT, they could do a lot of damage as one of the top babyface factions on NXT. And right now, there really isn't a babyface faction in NXT right now. The only heel faction that's in NXT right now is Darkstate, Osiris Griffin, Shaquan Sugars, Dion Lennox, and Cutler James, who are the current NXT Tag Team Champions right now as we speak. They're the only heel faction in NXT. And there isn't a babyface faction in NXT to combat against Darkstate, aside from like Joe Hendry and like three others. Because we saw last night on NXT, OTM, Bronco Nima and Lucian Price literally have the back of Joe Hendry. They had Joe Hendry's back, fending off against the other three members of Darkstate, which I never would have imagined. Right? Like, I never would have imagined two big dudes like OTM fending off against three members of Darkstate. And we even also saw Tony D'Angelo get into that very same NXT ring and cost Dion Lennox the victory. Excuse me. By not only attacking him with the steel chair, but randomly decide to attack Joe Hendry, with a spine buster, and putting, literally draping Joe Hendry over Dion Lennox, covering Lennox for the 1, 2, 3. So With that fact, one could argue that if the Rascals do make their way to NXT and they come back for a full-time run, we could be seeing faction warfare at its finest. And I think honestly, as crazy as this sounds, Darkseid might just be one of the most dominant heel factions we've seen in NXT since the Undisputed Era. And even you guys know that the Undisputed Era was one of the greatest factions of all time in NXT history. There I dare one person out there in the world to comment below and question my judgment on Darkseid on on comparing Darkseid to the Undisputed Era. I dare someone to comment below and tell me that Darkseid is not a great heel faction, because in my opinion, they are. They are one of the greatest heel factions of all time in NXT, as I said, since the Undisputed Era. And I don't think there's ever going to be another faction like them, because let's not forget, Darkseid as a group, they had only been a part of NXT for almost a year, literally almost a year now, and already they are two-time NXT tag team champions, which means that we could see them on the main roster within the next 9 to 15 months at the most. So sometime within the next year, within the next year and a half, we're gonna see Darkseid on the main roster. And I mean, think about this, right? Darkseid versus the Wyatt Six on SmackDown. Come on, even that right there would be a chaotic matchup, to say the very least. But it's hard to say whether or not we will see the Rascals back in WWE. I know that there have been several other promotions that have been wanting to sign the Rascals to their brand, but I think at this point, because of how much Wentz and Xavier did in NXT, not only during the final stages of the original Black and Gold brand, but also during the days of the 2.0 brand, the original, the new Black and Gold brand. I can honestly say that we could be looking at probably one of the best signings we've seen to NXT in a long time. Possible? Absolutely. Bound to happen? No one knows. What we do know is that fans on social media have had actually discovered this piece of news, and they've all been clamoring WWE to sign all four members of the Rascals back to NXT. And who knows? I mean, as far as like what championships that we see them go after, I mean, as crazy as this sounds, we could see Xavier and Wentz become NXT tag team champions again. We could see Trey Miguel go after the North American title. We could see Reed go after the NXT title, or it could be a bit of a mix-up, right? Like we could see Desmond Xavier go after the NXT title, which is the only championship that he never held in NXT. We could see Wentz go after the North American title, and we could see Miguel and Reed go after the NXT tag team titles. The combinations of who goes after what championship is just immensely crazy. But honestly, I would love to see the Rascals back in WWE, because this will give Desmond Xavier a second chance to show the world why he became one of the greatest North American champions of all time. Again, possible? Absolutely. Bound to happen? Only time will tell. But let me know down in the comments below your thoughts on the idea, and whether or not we should see the Rascalz back in WWE. Let me know down in the comments below, and that'll do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel and you guys want more WWE topic videos in the future, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and as always, make sure you guys are following me on all of my social media. All of my ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.